Hi, welcome to Unplugged with Eraldo and Daryn. Thanks for joining us. Like we always do, we're going to discuss the topics that you at home are talking about, as well as provide you with helpful tips and information. Making the headlines is multimillionaire Jeffrey Epstein, who awaits trial for sex trafficking. I think most of you would agree that sex trafficking is a form of modern slavery. The statistics are staggering.
Joining us on the show is Dr. Lori Handrahan from the Global Association of Human Trafficking Scholars and the author of Epidemic, America's Trade in Child Rape. We also have media contributor Nick Bryant. Nick is the author of The Franklin Scandal. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
This is a very weighted topic, as I'm sure you know, so let's get right into it. How common is sex trafficking in the United States? Lori.
America has been for many years one of the largest producers of child pornography around the world. We're producing about half of the world's child pornography. Holland has just eclipsed us as of last year. So if we're producing around half of the world's child pornography, you can imagine how many children are being trafficked to produce that kind of child pornography. Nobody has the exact data. Those are rough numbers.
Is there a reason the United States is so high? Do you have any?
It's a great question. I mean, we can only speculate because nobody's really dug in and done the research.
Right.
And until we really get the data and start to try to figure out why this crime is becoming so prolific, we don't have very good answers. I think it's because we have a huge population that has access to broadband internet, and because before Epstein, we've had a lot of impunity for child sex traffickers.
Right.
So America, sadly, has been a great place for white, wealthy men to have impunity to traffic children, as you've seen in the Epstein case.
So Dr. Handrahan, I noticed that some of these cases are kind of similar where you have a person who wants to do good, the Jeffrey Epstein case, but they wanna, it's like cover themselves up, and then all of a sudden you see something totally off the radar. I mean, why is that like a typical course that somebody would take, or?
Yeah, I mean, they don't want to do good. They want to look like they're doing good as their criminal defense mechanism. So the predators are setting up their criminal defense mechanism from a very early age. So if they ever get caught, they can say, oh, I've never been arrested, I have no criminal record, and look at all this good I've done for the community, right? They also, to be a predator, you have to have access to children. So they will create a career looking like they're a humanitarian or a pediatric oncologist or the best secondary school teacher or kindergarten teacher, child protection officer, and they're actually, accessing vulnerable children and trafficking them.
Nick, you're heavily involved in the Franklin Scandal. You're heavily involved in the entire thing. Is there some relation to the Franklin Scandal and Jeffrey Epstein? Are they sort of run by the same heads? Do they relate at all?
There are a number of parallels between the Franklin Scandal and Jeffrey Epstein. Both flew children from coast to coast with impunity for a number of years. Both had sources of wealth that were somewhat ambiguous. Both were covered up by law enforcement. In the case of Lawrence King, you had federal and state law enforcement, and also in the case of Jeffrey Epstein, there was federal and state law enforcement. And also, there was tremendous amount of harassment to the victims. When both the scandals started to become unglued, the victims were just received tremendous amounts of heat.
So let's talk about
so many
discrediting the victims in this case, which seems to be a popular target or a popular tool used. Why is that so, I guess, why is it so orchestrated? Why is it so manipulated?
Well, the victims are easy to compromise. I mean, you take kids that are generally from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, and then they're repeatedly molested, and a lot of times they're either turned on to drugs or they start taking drugs to assuage their pain. And then at a certain point, they get expunged, they lose their youthful marketability, and they get expunged by that network. And basically what you have is someone that's going to be from a background that generally wasn't the paragon of sanity. And then they were repeatedly molested, and a lot of times they're drug addicts, and they've done things that have compromised their own integrity. So victims are quite easy to dismiss and shred their integrity. And that's one of the problems, is that when kids come forward, they're often dismissed, especially when they're saying, I was molested by this powerful individual, or I was molested by this senator, or I was molested by this representative. It's a kid that is generally has a lot of issues, and some of them have even been in prison. So it's a perfect system because the victims compromise their own integrity.
Right. It's almost like a closed loop.
Yes.
That's right.
You sort of described like a perfect victim, just for lack of a better term, but I'm curious, Dr. Lori, is there sort of a common like predator profile that people should look out for? You know, Nick, please feel free to jump in, but curious about that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So from my book, Epidemic, I looked at lots of different professions to see if there was a profile. And now we're digging into child sex trafficking in higher education, which is something that nobody's talking about. I have a group of research assistants, and we're going to have a database up by the end of the summer, where we're looking at professors and university employees who've been arrested on child pornography, child sex trafficking charges. I'd say, I mean, I have over 200 already. So the predator profile is they tend to be highly awarded, so they seek out awards to look like. So they're always the Boys and Girls Club volunteer who gave the most hours. They get awards for ethics in the communities. They work at the soup kitchens.
The do-gooders.
The do-gooders.
Exactly.
Humanitarian careers, they go into humanitarian careers. So they're both highly awarded, and then they have access to vulnerable children. And if the children aren't inherently vulnerable, they will make the children vulnerable, as Nick was explaining, by drugging them while they rape them, by destroying their family networks, by isolating them, by saying no one's going to believe you. And predators are highly networked by definition. The crime is a networked crime.
Right.
So as Nick was saying, I mean, our criminal justice system is very broken. And the reason that victims haven't been believed is because you have defense attorneys, you have assistant attorney generals, you have heads of police and law enforcement who are also involved in the crime. Mm-hmm. So a predator will typically say to a child, I know the DA, no one's ever going to believe you, right?
Right.
So the predators don't want to go to jail, right? They
Right.
want to enjoy impunity. So they specifically schedule their crime in a strategic way to make sure that they have impunity.
Wow.
So even credible, so-called credible victims are chewed up by this broken criminal justice system where there are a lot of predators around.
Right. So, Nick, Lawrence King and Jeffrey Epstein, how were they able to traffic these kids from state to state?
Well, there was obviously law enforcement protection.
Right.
With Jeffrey,
There has to be.
There has to be.
With Lawrence King, what's kind of interesting is with Lawrence King, social services went to state police and went to federal police, law enforcement, and said that Lawrence King is running a trafficking network, and they were simply ignored. And ultimately, what happened in that case is some senators, Nebraska state senators, heard about it, and they formed a Franklin committee, and then they started digging into it, and then ultimately there was much more malfeasance by state and federal law enforcement to cover it up because these senators hired a very good investigator. With Jeffrey Epstein, you saw a lot of state malfeasance in the grand jury. I mean, the grand jury enabled him. The Palm Beach Police Department had 5 victims, underage victims that had come forward who they talked to, and then they had a number of corroborating people. And in that state grand jury, Jeffrey Epstein was indicted on 1 count of adult pandering. So he wasn't indicted on any counts of child trafficking or child pandering. And one of the things is grand juries are they've been notorious. They're very easy to sway because a special prosecutor is appointed to be the prosecutor of a grand jury. And grand jurors are just regular citizens that have come in for jury duty.
Right.
And so they're sitting there, and then the special prosecutor puts the evidence in front of them.
Right.
And then they ultimately decide whether or not they're going to indict. So only evidence that the special prosecutor deems worthy are shown to these grand jurors. So it's a very easy way to cover up.
Well, the Epstein and the King case sort of have a lot of similarities, and both seem to get a little cozy with presidential candidates, president himself. Why do you think that is?
Right.
Well, in both the Epstein and the Franklin scandal, the predators, as I've said, have gone up to Mount Olympus. I mean, they were pandering children to the highest echelons of government. And I think that that's one of the reasons why they were doing that with impunity, is because these guys could pull strings to make sure that Lawrence King and Jeffrey Epstein were unscathed, and both of them were largely unscathed for many years.
But it almost seems like they're hiding in plain sight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you're going to take a picture with the president, that's the most visible you could possibly
right,
be.
yeah.
Like, they're not in these underground networks.
Right,
they're out.
right.
Like, is it a cockiness about them? I'm just, like, flabbergasted.
No,
by the whole thing.
what Lori was talking about, they create this public veneer.
Right.
And that's part of their public veneer.
Right.
And then someone says, well, that guy couldn't possibly have molested a kid. You know,
Right,
he
donates
he
to
donates, and
Right,
there's a
right.
picture of him with the president. So that's the situation, is that they know how to insulate themselves, and they know how to create a veneer that makes them look like fine, upstanding citizens.
Wow. So what can families learn from all of this? How can we as society, what can we do as a society to help alleviate the issue? I mean, what can people do? I mean, there's got to be some answers.
Or some red flags that people
right?
can at least...
Something that we can, right, look forward.
Well, I think that what we have to do as a society is, right now, we're troubled by statute of limitations. And New York just completely abolished the statute of limitations on child sexual abuse. And that's what we have to do now. State and the federal government, state governments and federal governments need to abolish the statute of limitations, because that will hold various institutions to be much more accountable. If they know that they can be sued for the duration, they're going to be much more cautious about
Right.
whether or not predators are going to be part of their organization.
They're not waiting for that timeline
Yes.
to just like run
Yes.
out. Dr. Lori, I'm wondering about some signs of predatory behavior that maybe the public out there can at least, you know, absorb and learn from. Is there anything that you can shed light to?
Yeah, so these are great questions. I think doing shows like you're doing, having us on to talk about this issue is incredibly important, because it's been a subject that the media hasn't been interested in covering prior to Epstein and Larry Nassar, prior to the Me Too movement.
Right.
I would go to many journalists and say, could you please cover this? I know Nick can speak to this as well. And people be like, my editor said it's too disgusting of a topic. You know, people don't want to hear about it. We don't want to talk about it. So there's been this taboo in America of not talking about it. And what I always say is predators count on your silence, right?
Right.
Pedophiles count on you being silent. So the first thing that everybody can do is stand up and speak out. If you've been victimized, don't hide it. Speak out. Go to the media. Get on your local talk shows. Write an op-ed.
The best
go to your
disinfectant is
community.
sunlight.
Absolutely. And in my book, I have all these little action items, because people will always say, what can I do?
Right.
So there's a lot of easy things that you can do now with social media too, right?
Totally.
Go to your courthouse. Get the criminal complaint by the volleyball coach that was arrested at your
Right.
university. Put that criminal complaint around town so people knew what he did, so he can't be rehired in another school and victimize more children, right? Get the word out. Everybody has a voice, and everybody can use that voice. And then in terms of policy, I mean, Nick's absolutely right. Statute of limitations has to be eradicated across the entire country, nationally, every state. Also, prosecutorial discretion has to be eliminated. There's no oversight for prosecutors, and prosecutors can do whatever they want. You know this from
Yes.
this term. Prosecutorial discretion is the dirtiest two words in America, in my opinion. So until we have oversight of how prosecutors treat victims, when victims come forward and say, I was raped by this powerful man, we won't be able to change the system, because to me that's the biggest roadblock. So many prosecutors dismiss the victims, marginalize them, or prey on them themselves.
And groom them to sort
Groom
of
them.
become the perfect victims.
Absolutely.
And little Stockholm syndrome almost.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's. I'm so happy you guys
Yes,
are
thank
coming
you
on
so
to talk
much
about
for being
this.
here, and hopefully, you know, we can shed a light onto
Yeah.
this issue.
Thank you for doing the show.
Our
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Okay, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Joining us via Skype from Maryland is Karen Huger from Bravo's hit TV show, The Real Housewives of Potomac. Everyone knows I'm the biggest fan.
The biggest. Although she is known for throwing her over-the-top parties, Karen's family always comes first, and she has launched her new fragrance line. We have a lot to cover, so thanks for joining us, my dear.
Thank you for having me, guys.
I gotta say, I know Eraldo might not be as versed with the Housewives as me.
Right.
Okay.
But this season of Potomac has been my favorite by far. It's a breakout season for all of you ladies. Do you feel that?
I feel it. I feel it. I think what we really did was peel back the layer of the onion so you could really get to know us individually.
Right.
And I think it's working, and people are just loving it. And thanks to the fans for the support. We really appreciate it.
What was the process like when you first, got the call from Bravo? Like, what was the conversation with Ray like to get on Potomac? Was he not into it? Were you into it? Walk me through that.
Well, everyone has heard the story, but well, obviously you haven't heard it, but I predicted maybe 5 years before I got the call from Bravo that I would be a Potomac housewife if it ever came to Potomac.
Of
Right.
course.
So when,
Right.
so when I actually got the phone call, I didn't consult Ray. I just went down and said, I'm a housewife.
So,
He said, you're kidding. Yeah, I am.
so Karen, has your show appearance affected any relationships that you have with your friends or family, whatever?
Absolutely. I mean, as far as my immediate family, my nucleus, my kids and my husband, it's made us tighter than ever. We're stronger than ever. Of course, there are challenges when you have friends who see you on TV every day, but they're used to you being over the top if they're my friends anyway. But this took it to another level. So I just had to tell them, I'm still the same Karen at the core of everything you see and just hanging there with me. And I'm really lucky. I have a lot of love and support from my aunts, my sister, my brother. There's nothing I can't do when you have that type of support from friends and family. So it just took a little nurturing, a little, coddling from me, and I don't have a problem doing that because I'm so blessed to have them.
As you said, we've been peeling back the layers of the onion. We know that you and Giselle have had contentions. You and Ashley certainly have gone at it this season, and Katie back. When the cameras are off, what's your relationship like with the ladies?
I gotta be real. I think let's just start with Ashley. I think Ashley is and should be in a very guarded position right now. She wants
Absolutely.
to protect her family as well. So, I wouldn't say that Ashley and I are in a bad position. I'm just not tolerating any stupidity or any attacks unnecessarily. So I handle them, but I'll say that Ashley and I are in a place where I am open to growing with her. And that's a good place after all that she put me through for, 3 seasons?
Yes.
So that's a beautiful place to be with Ashley. As far as Giselle is Giselle. I don't waste time on Giselle. I just do Karen.
So Karen, I understand you have many businesses, but you just recently also released a new fragrance.
Congrats.
Let's talk about
Thank you
Adam.
so
Let's talk about that.
Yes. La Dame, my baby.
Yes.
I'm sitting here with it. I'm just so honored. Actually, I've always been a huge lover of the beauty industry. It was natural for me if I was afforded this opportunity, this platform called Bravo, which is huge. Why not pursue my passion? And so the first thing I did was discuss it with my mom, and she very much was a part of the creation of La Dame fragrance by Karen Huger. And she actually held the first prototype. So from beginning to end, I shared discovery with the girls, conversations about production, and now we're mass producing and distributing through Bloomingdale's at this point. We're popping
Wow.
up. Yeah. So it's just a dream come true. And I know my mother is sitting on my shoulders. She's my angel, just, having a good time.
I love that.
Bloomingdale's future.
I mean, Karen, you're such an entrepreneur. You're a brand name in and of itself. I think Karen here goes a long way. What other businesses do you kind of want to get involved in, or do you want to build out the fragrance line? What else can we expect from you?
Oh, I'm definitely going to build out the fragrance line. But again, the affordable luxury brand is what I'm about. My mother always said, not everyone can buy a $200 bottle of fragrance. But I think that if you're going to buy an $80 bottle of fragrance, it still should be an affordable but luxury product. And so I'm going to expand on there, but I also have, a licensing deal with RPG, Show Wigs. My wigs are coming out. And again, just stay tuned. There's so many other opportunities that will fall under what we are, labeling as the House of Huger, which is the affordable luxury brand.
House of Huger, I know
Wow,
it well.
wow. So let me understand this. You're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, you've been married for 23 years, you have 2 wonderful children.
Yep.
Is there anything that you haven't done yet that you would like to do?
You know what? I just like to travel more. I would like to really, really slow down. After losing 2 parents within 7 months of each other, it taught me the value of creating memories. So every year is now my commitment to take my family with me somewhere different and experience a different place with them and create that memory so that if and when my time comes, they have great memories. And that's what matters. My parents gave me great memories, and that's my charge now to my family.
I love it. Before we let you go, as I've said, Potomac's been a breakout season. No spoilers, But what can people expect from this season?
You're going to get more cat fights. I know I'm delivering maybe 2 of them by myself.
Of course, we got to get more cat
I got to
fights.
bring it. I got to bring it. Well, you have to. I mean, you have, for us, we're 6 dynamic personalities.
Right.
And of course, we're strong women. So we butt heads, but then we have conversations and get to a great place. So hang in there with us. You still got some hooplas coming your way.
Don't I
You're gonna
know
see a
it.
lot of personal growth in our friendships.
Wow.
Karen, thank you so much
Yes,
for joining us,
thank
and I can't wait
you.
to try the fragrance. I'm gonna douse my body in it.
It's donfragrance.com. I'm that businesswoman. I'm promoting. So
I am
check it
all
out.
about House of Huger. Thank you so
Bye,
much, Karen.
Take care.
Appreciate it. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Joining us via Skype from Atlanta is William Matthews, the CEO of Kids for Wealth. William is a 14-year-old entrepreneur with a business centered around teaching kids great money habits.
I mean, what an overachiever. Sounds like we all could learn a thing or two from him. At 11 years old, William doubled his savings from launching his business, Snack Shack, and soon he launched his second business, teaching kids how to make purchases and save for the future. Thank you so much for joining us, William. I feel like I accomplished nothing in my life
Nothing,
right now.
Absolutely nothing.
Thank you so much. It's great meeting you guys.
Great meeting you. Can you tell us a little about Kids for Wealth? How did it get started? What's it about?
Yeah, so Kids for Wealth is my business that teaches kids good money habits using my money system that shows them exactly what to do with their money. And it also shows the successful actions that I've taken to basically create my own business and get to the point where I'm at like now.
So how long has this now been on? How long have you been doing this now for?
Well, I started Kids for Wealth, like right after selling snacks. So it was like around 11 or 12.
That's incredible. Give us some reasons why, good money saving habits should start when you're young, but give us some reasons why it's important to save your money and what you've learned.
So I think it's really important to have good money habits because in the future when you become an adult, you'll be able to have you won't have debt or bad credit or anything, and you'll be able to get the things you want, and you won't have to worry about billing or anything because you have the money for that,
So William, I understand your parents were a great influence in your decision making. What should parents really teach their kids about starting a business or even saving money?
So the one thing I think parents could do best is definitely check out my website and my money system, but because it shows what good money habits are and why it's important to have them, and it also shows how you can start your own business and that sort of thing. And it's also hard for a lot of parents to talk with their kids about good money habits. A lot of people don't know how to really open up with it or that sort of thing, talk about it. And with my money system, it's just a video that you can easily watch, and that helps a lot.
Where do you see your business growing then, William?
So I'm actually working on a book so that people who like to read more or like to or prefer to have a book over video, they can always get the book. And it also tells stories and things I've learned over the years and whatnot. And I'm also going to be doing videos for older kids. So my money system will be for teenagers and even maybe adults, for it'll go over banking and covering expenses and whatnot, that sort of thing. That's more of a for a higher group of age.
Wow. In your experience, what do you think about kids, or teens rather, getting credit cards and sort of establishing good credit at a younger age? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I really agree with that. My parents are getting me into having my own credit card and whatnot, and they've like taught me things about credit and whatnot and what's good about it. And yeah, I agree with like going. I believe that like as long as you keep your credit well, then it's good.
So, well, let me jump in here now. Let me throw you a curveball here, right? So, what do you like to do besides your business? Is there something you are passionate about that you like to share with our viewers?
Well, I like to spend time with my friends and hang out and whatnot, and obviously play games. You know, I'm not just about business. I have like, you know, things I do as a kid and everything. But I, I guess the only other things I do besides my business is hang out with friends and go on and learn more about like business and more things to learn.
William,
yeah,
before I let you go, I got to know what you're saving your money for. Do you want to buy something crazy, like a car? Like, what is it?
So, I'm actually saving up for an electric skateboard. It's
Nice.
$380. So like I'm almost there because, yeah.
Good for you.
All right, William. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. All the best to you, and
Thank
good
you.
luck, okay?
I learned
Thank
something
you so
today,
much.
man. I learned something today. Thanks again to all of our guests, and thanks to all of you at home for watching.
And remember, let's continue our conversation on social media. We look forward to hearing from you and share with us topics and guests you would like to see on the show. Have a great weekend.
Preceding was sponsored by